Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the abandoned research station, feeling the vibrations of her team's movements echo through the structure. The Kepler station had been silent for 3 months, its entire crew of 200 researchers vanishing without a trace. The only clue left behind was a desperate transmission that cut off mid-sentence. Speaking of something called Project Mindbridge, "Ma'am, we've got something," came the voice of Sergeant Torres through her comm. His tone carried that particular weight that meant whatever he'd found wasn't good news. Sarah made her way through the dimly lit corridors, her boots clicking against the metal grating. Emergency lighting cast long shadows that seemed to move with their own sinister purpose. The station felt like a tomb, sterile and cold with that particular emptiness that comes only from sudden abandonment. She found Torres and his squad gathered around what appeared to be a supply closet. The door hung open, revealing boxes of rations and cleaning supplies, but Torres was crouched beside something hidden behind the stacked containers. "What is it?" Sarah asked, though she could already hear it, a soft whimpering sound that made her stomach clench. "Found her about 10 minutes ago," Torres said quietly. "She's been hiding back there. Won't come out, won't speak, just keeps making that sound." Sarah moved closer and peered into the cramped space behind the supplies. There, curled into the smallest possible ball, was a child. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with tangled dark hair that hung like a curtain around her face. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she clutched something small and metallic against her chest. "Hey there," Sarah said softly, crouching down to make herself less imposing. "It's okay. We're here to help." The child's head snapped up at the sound of her voice, revealing large, frightened eyes that seemed far too old for such a young face. But it wasn't just fear Sarah saw there, it was intelligence. Sharp, calculating intelligence that made her skin crawl for reasons she couldn't explain. "My name is Captain Chen," she continued, keeping her voice gentle. "Can you tell me your name?" The child stared at her for a long moment, then slowly uncurled herself. She was smaller than Sarah had initially thought, almost fragile-looking, but there was something in her posture that suggested coiled tension, like a spring ready to release. "Maya," the child whispered, her voice barely audible. "Maya Patel." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that name. Dr. Rajesh Patel had been the lead researcher on Project Mindbridge, the station's most classified experiment. According to the files they'd recovered, he'd had no family, no children listed in his personnel records. "Maya, where is everyone else? Where are all the people who worked here?" The child's grip tightened on the object she held, and Sarah could now see it was some kind of small device, covered in buttons and tiny displays. Maya's eyes darted between Sarah and the device, as if she was calculating something. "They came in the night," Maya said, her voice stronger now but still carrying that disturbing undertone of adult awareness. "The Zephyrians. They thought they were so clever, using their stealth ships and jamming our communications, but they didn't know about me." Torres exchanged a glance with Sarah. The Zephyrians were humanity's most dangerous enemy, an alien species that had been systematically destroying human colonies for the past 5 years. Their technology was far superior to anything humans possessed, and their tactical abilities had made them nearly unstoppable. The fact that they had found and attacked this hidden research station was terrifying enough, but how could a child know anything about their methods? "Maya," Sarah said carefully, "how do you know about the Zephyrians? How do you know what they did?" The child stood up slowly, still clutching her device. As she moved into the better light of the corridor, Sarah could see that Maya's eyes had an unusual quality to them. They seemed to shimmer slightly, as if there was something moving behind them. "Because I was watching," Maya said simply. "I was connected to all the station's sensors when they attacked. I saw everything they did, every move they made. I recorded it all." She held up her device. "And I know how they think." A cold realization began to creep into Sarah's mind. Project Mindbridge. She'd seen references to it in the classified files. Something about direct neural interfaces and enhanced cognitive processing. The implications were staggering. "Maya, were you part of your father's research?" The child tilted her head, studying Sarah with those strange, shimmering eyes. "Daddy didn't have a choice. The military said they needed someone young, someone whose brain could adapt to the interface without rejection. He tried to refuse at first." Sarah felt sick. The idea that the military had experimented on a child, even with her father's eventual consent, was horrifying. But if what Maya was suggesting was true, if she had somehow been connected to the station's systems during the attack, "You saw how they fought," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. Maya nodded. "I saw everything. How they moved their ships, how they coordinated their attacks, how they disabled our defenses. I learned their patterns, their weaknesses." Her voice took on an eerie quality, as if she was reciting from memory. "They always attack from the same angles. They always target communications first, then power, then life support. They think in rigid hierarchies and they have blind spots." Tora stepped forward, his military training overriding his discomfort with the situation. "Kid, if you really know how they fight, you could help us. You could help us save other people." Maya's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught something in her eyes. A flicker of something that might have been satisfaction, or perhaps anticipation. "I can do more than help you understand how they fight," Maya said quietly. "I can show you how to beat them. But first you have to take me with you. You have to let me help." Sarah felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. Every instinct told her that taking a traumatized child into potential combat was wrong. But the rational part of her mind understood the opportunity they'd been presented with. If Maya really did possess knowledge of Zephyrian tactics, she could be the key to turning the tide of the war. But looking into those strange, too intelligent eyes, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else going on here, something Maya wasn't telling them. The child seemed too calm, too composed for someone who had just survived a massacre. And there was something about the way she spoke about the Zephyrians that suggested more than just observation. "We'll take you with us," Sarah decided, hoping she wasn't making a terrible mistake. "But first you need to tell us everything you saw." Maya smiled for the first time since they'd found her, and Sarah felt another chill run down her spine. It wasn't the smile of a frightened child. It was the smile of someone who had just gotten exactly what they wanted. The briefing room aboard the UES Prometheus buzzed with tension as senior officers filed in to hear what the strange child from Kepler Station had to say. Admiral Harrison took his place at the head of the table, his weathered face showing the strain of losing 3 more colonies in the past month. Beside him sat Captain Chen, who had spent the last 2 days trying to understand exactly what they had rescued. Maya sat in a chair that was too big for her small frame, but she showed no signs of intimidation. The device she'd been clutching was now connected to the ship's holographic display system, and her fingers moved across its surface with practiced ease. The shimmer in her eyes seemed more pronounced under the bright lights of the briefing room. "Begin whenever you're ready," Admiral Harrison said, his voice gentle despite the gravity of the situation. Maya nodded and activated her device. The holographic display came to life, showing a 3-dimensional representation of Kepler Station. "The Zephyrians arrived at 0347 hours, she began, her young voice carrying an unsettling authority. 3 stealth frigates approaching from the station's shadow side to avoid our early warning sensors." The display shifted, showing sleek alien vessels moving through space with fluid precision. The officers leaned forward, transfixed. Most had never seen Zephyrian ships in such detail. Encounters usually ended too quickly for detailed observation. "They used a new type of jamming technology," Maya continued, her fingers dancing across the device's controls. "Not electromagnetic like we expected, but something that interfered with quantum entanglement communication. That's why the distress signal cut off so abruptly." Commander Walsh, the Prometheus's chief tactical officer, frowned. "We don't have quantum entanglement communication. That technology is still theoretical." Maya turned those strange eyes toward him. Daddy's research included communication upgrades. The military wanted him to test new systems. She paused, tilting her head slightly. "You should upgrade your ships. The Zephyrians will start targeting quantum communications more frequently now." A chill settled over the room as the implication sank in. If the Zephyrians were preparing countermeasures for technology humanity didn't even know they had, what else did the aliens know about human capabilities? The display shifted again, showing the attack in real time. The Zephyrian ships moved with coordinated precision, striking specific points on the station with surgical accuracy. "They always target the same systems in the same order," Maya explained. "Communications first, then power distribution nodes, then atmospheric processors. It's efficient but predictable." Admiral Harrison studied the tactical display. "How did they know where those systems were located?" "Kepler Station's schematics were classified. Maya's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. They've been watching human colonies for longer than you think. They study our construction patterns, our technology placement. Every station and colony they destroy teaches them more about how we build things. She manipulated the display to show attack patterns from other Zephyrian assaults. Look at the similarities. New Singapore, Titan Base, Proxima Station. They all follow the same pattern. The aliens attack from predictable angles, target the same systems, use the same ship formations. Lieutenant Rodriguez, a young officer who had survived the New Singapore attack, leaned forward intently. But our defense forces tried to predict their movements. It never worked. Because you were thinking like humans, Maya said simply. You assumed they would adapt their tactics like humans do. But Zephyrians think differently. They value efficiency over innovation. Once they find a method that works, they stick to it until it fails completely. She brought up a new display showing the Zephyrian ships' movement patterns. They navigate in perfect geometric formations. Always. Watch their approach vectors. They form equilateral triangles, perfect hexagons, precise mathematical patterns. It's not just preference, it's how their minds work. Commander Walsh was taking rapid notes. If they're that predictable, why haven't we been able to exploit it? Maya's fingers stopped moving across her device and she looked directly at the commander. Because no one had the right perspective to see it. No one was connected to enough sensors with enough processing power to track all the variables simultaneously. The implications of her words hung in the air like a physical presence. Captain Chen shifted uncomfortably, remembering the classified files about Project Mindbridge. The idea that they had enhanced a child's cognitive abilities to process combat data was disturbing enough. But the results were undeniably impressive. Maya, Admiral Harrison said carefully, you mentioned blind spots. Can you show us? The child's face lit up with something that might have been pride. She activated a new sequence on her device, and the holographic display showed Zephyrian ships from multiple angles. Their visual sensors are positioned for maximum coverage, but they have a systematic flaw. They don't account for three-dimensional thinking the way humans do. The display zoomed in on the alien ships, highlighting specific areas. Zephyrians evolved on a world with very different physics than Earth. Their spatial reasoning is more two-dimensional. They can think in 3 dimensions, but they instinctively plan in layers, like floor plans stacked on top of each other. She manipulated the display to show attack vectors coming from above and below the Zephyrian formation's plane. They always expect attacks to come from the same general level as their ships. Attacks from directly above or below their formation confuse their tactical systems. Captain Chen felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. Are you saying we could actually surprise them? Maya nodded. More than surprise them. I can predict their responses to specific threats. If you attack from above with light fighters while approaching from their formation's edges with heavy ships, their targeting systems will prioritize the wrong threats. She brought up a simulation, showing human ships executing the exact maneuver she described. The Zephyrian formation responded just as she predicted, leaving crucial blind spots exposed. Commander Walsh was scribbling notes furiously. This could work. If we modify our fighter deployment strategies, coordinate our approach vectors. There's more, Maya interrupted, her voice taking on that unsettling adult quality again. Their shields have a resonance frequency that fluctuates in predictable patterns. If you time your weapons fire correctly, you can punch through defenses that should be impenetrable. Admiral Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying the child with new understanding. Maya, how do you know all this? I understand you were connected to the station's sensors, but this level of analysis... For the first time since the briefing began, Maya looked uncertain. Her grip tightened on her device and the shimmer in her eyes seemed to intensify. The interface changes how you process information. Daddy said it would help me think faster, see patterns better, but when the Zephyrians attacked, something else happened. She paused, looking around the room at the attentive faces. I didn't just watch them fight. I felt how they thought. For a few minutes, when their ships were interfacing with the station's computers, I was connected to their tactical systems too. The silence in the room was deafening. The implications were staggering. If Maya had actually interfaced with Zephyrian technology, even briefly, she might possess insights that could change the entire course of the war. But Captain Chen found herself wondering about the price of such knowledge. Looking at Maya's young face, seeing the way her eyes moved with calculated precision rather than childlike wonder, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened during that connection had changed the girl in ways they were only beginning to understand. "Can you teach us?" Admiral Harrison asked finally. "Can you show our tactical teams how to implement these strategies?" Maya smiled again, that same unsettling expression Sarah had seen back on the station. "I can do better than that. I can help you plan the perfect counterattack. But first you need to understand something important about the Zephyrians." She leaned forward, her young voice carrying an authority that made seasoned military officers listen intently. "They're not just attacking human colonies randomly. They're following a specific plan, working toward a particular goal, and if we don't stop them soon, their next target will be Earth itself." The Vanguard System's asteroid belt provided the perfect testing ground for Maya's theories. 3 days after her briefing, the UES Prometheus led a small task force toward reported Zephyrian activity near the mining colonies. Captain Chen stood on the bridge, watching Maya work at a specially configured tactical station, her small fingers flying across controls that had been modified to accommodate her size. "Contact bearing 270, elevation 15 degrees, reported Ensign Parker from sensors. 3 ships Zephyrian configuration." Maya didn't look up from her displays. "Frigate-class standard patrol formation. They're investigating the mining equipment we abandoned yesterday." Her voice carried that same unsettling confidence she'd shown in the briefing room. "They'll follow predictable search patterns, checking each asteroid in sequence." Admiral Harrison, who had insisted on observing the test personally, moved closer to Maya's station. "Are you certain about their movement patterns?" Maya manipulated her holographic display, showing the Zephyrian ships as small red dots among the asteroids. "Watch," she said simply. The alien vessels moved exactly as her display predicted, methodically investigating each piece of abandoned mining equipment in a precise geometric pattern. Commander Walsh activated the tactical communications. "All ships prepare for testing sequence Alpha. Remember, this is about observing their responses, not engaging in full combat." The human task force consisted of 4 ships, the Prometheus, 2 frigates, and a squadron of fighter craft. According to Maya's plan, they would execute a carefully choreographed attack to test specific aspects of Zephyrian tactical responses. "Phase 1, Maya announced, her small hands working the controls with practiced ease. "Deploy fighters from above their formation plane. Approach vector should be exactly 73 degrees from their current heading." Captain Chen gave the order, and 12 human fighters emerged from the asteroid field's upper regions. The Zephyrian ships reacted instantly, their formations shifting to address the threat, but exactly as Maya had predicted, they moved in rigid geometric patterns. "See how they respond?" Maya pointed to her display, where the alien ships were arranging themselves in a perfect triangle. "They prioritize mathematical precision over tactical flexibility. Now watch what happens when we attack from below simultaneously." The human frigate swept in from the lower reaches of the asteroid field, coming at the Zephyrians from an entirely different angle. The alien formation seemed to hesitate for a moment, their ships wavering as their tactical systems struggled to process threats coming from multiple elevation levels. Their targeting computers can't efficiently prioritize targets on different vertical planes, Maya explained, her young voice carrying an excitement that seemed inappropriate for the deadly dance playing out before them. "They'll focus on one threat level while leaving themselves exposed to the other." The test proceeded exactly as Maya had outlined. The Zephyrian ships focused their fire on the fighters above them, almost ignoring the frigates approaching from below until they were dangerously close. When the aliens finally responded to the lower threat, they abandoned their precision formation, creating gaps that hadn't existed before. "Fascinating," Admiral Harrison murmured. "They really do think in layers rather than true 3-dimensional space." Maya nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. Her displays showed weapon signatures and shield frequencies, data that the ship's sensors shouldn't have been able to gather at this distance. Now for the really important test. Their shields. She began typing commands into her station, and Captain Chen felt a chill as she realized Maya was somehow interfacing directly with the ship's weapon systems. "Maya, what are you doing?" "Testing the resonance frequency theory," the child replied without looking away from her screens. "Prometheus, fire a single pulse from your main batteries at the lead Zephyrian ship." Frequency modulation 7.3 terahertz. Captain Chen hesitated. They weren't supposed to engage in full combat during this test, but Maya's confidence was compelling. Fire, she ordered. The Prometheus's main weapon fired a single precisely calibrated energy pulse. The beam struck the lead Zephyrian ship's shields, and for a moment, nothing seemed different. Then suddenly, the entire shield envelope flickered and failed for nearly 3 seconds before re-establishing itself. Impossible, breathed Commander Walsh. Those shields should have absorbed that pulse without any effect. Maya smiled, that unsettling expression that never quite reached her eyes. Their shield technology uses harmonic resonance for efficiency. If you hit them at exactly the right frequency, you can cause a cascade failure that disrupts the entire system temporarily. She manipulated her display to show shield frequency patterns from all 3 Zephyrian ships. Each ship's shields operate on slightly different frequencies, but they follow predictable mathematical progressions. If you know the base frequency of one ship, you can calculate the others. The implications were staggering. Human weapons had never been able to significantly damage Zephyrian shields, but Maya was suggesting they could disable them entirely with the right approach. How do you know their base frequencies? Admiral Harrison asked, his voice carefully controlled. Maya paused, her fingers hovering over her controls. For a moment, she looked like the child she was, uncertain and perhaps a little frightened. When I was connected to their systems during the attack on Kepler Station, I learned more than just their tactics. I felt how their technology works, understood their engineering principles. She turned to face the Admiral, and the shimmer in her eyes seemed more pronounced than ever. Their entire technological base is built on harmonic mathematics. Everything from their ship designs to their weapons systems follows the same underlying principles. Once you understand the pattern, you can predict how any of their systems will behave. Captain Chen found herself wondering what other changes had occurred in Maya during that brief connection with alien technology. The child seemed to possess knowledge that no human should have, insights into alien engineering that had eluded human scientists for years. Maya, she said carefully, when you were connected to their systems, did you sense anything else? Any indication of their larger plans or objectives? The child's expression grew distant, as if she was accessing memories that weren't entirely her own. They're mapping human technology systematically. Every attack, every encounter, they're gathering data about our capabilities. They know about our new weapon designs before we deploy them, understand our ship configurations better than our own engineers do. She brought up a new display showing attack patterns from multiple Zephyrian assaults over the past year. Look at the progression. They're not just destroying colonies, they're learning. Each attack is more efficient than the last because they're building a complete database of human technology and tactics. The Zephyrian ships in the asteroid field began to withdraw. Having completed their investigation of the mining equipment, they moved in perfect formation, completely unaware that they had just provided humanity with crucial insights into their own vulnerabilities. They're preparing for something big, Maya continued, her voice taking on that eerie adult quality. All this data gathering, all these attacks, they're building toward a final assault. They want to understand human capabilities completely before they attempt to destroy Earth. Admiral Harrison felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. If Maya was right, humanity had been playing a defensive game while the Zephyrians prepared for checkmate. But the child's insights might have just given them the tools they needed to turn the tables. Can you help us plan a counteroffensive? He asked. Something that uses these vulnerabilities to maximum advantage? Maya turned back to her displays, her small hands moving across the controls with inhuman precision. I can do better than that. I can show you how to make them defeat themselves. But first, you need to understand that the Zephyrians aren't just our enemy. They're afraid of us. She looked up at the assembled officers, her young face serious beyond her years. That's why they're being so systematic, so careful. They've encountered something about humanity that frightens them, and they're trying to understand it before we figure out what we're capable of. Captain Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Looking at Maya, with her enhanced intelligence and alien-touched insights, she was beginning to understand what might have frightened the Zephyrians. Humanity's capacity for adaptation, for changing themselves to meet new challenges, might be the very thing that would save them. But at what cost? Looking at the child who had become something more and less than human, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if the price of victory would be worth paying. The war room aboard the UES Prometheus had been transformed into something resembling a neural command center. Maya sat at the center of it all, her small form dwarfed by the massive holographic displays that surrounded her. Cables and interfaces connected her device to every tactical system on the ship, creating a web of technology that allowed her to process information at inhuman speeds. Zephyrian battle fleet detected entering the Kepler system, reported Communications Officer Martinez. 15 ships, including what appears to be a command dreadnought. Maya's eyes were closed, her consciousness interfacing directly with the ship's sensor networks. When she opened them, they glowed with that strange shimmer that had become more pronounced over the past week. They're returning to finish mapping the research station's technology. The dreadnought carries scanning equipment specifically designed to analyze human neural interface systems. Admiral Harrison felt his blood run cold. They know about Project Mindbridge? They've always known, Maya replied, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. The neural interface technology represents humanity's greatest advantage and greatest threat. They want to understand it before more humans like me can be created. Captain Chen studied the tactical display showing the approaching Zephyrian fleet. 15 ships against our task force of 8. The odds aren't good. Maya's fingers danced across her control interface and the holographic display shifted to show the battle space in 3 dimensions. The odds are irrelevant if you fight by their rules. But we're not going to fight by their rules. She began manipulating the display, showing attack vectors and ship movements that seemed to defy conventional tactical wisdom. The Zephyrians expect us to engage them in traditional ship-to-ship combat. They've calculated the outcome based on firepower, armor, and numerical superiority, but they haven't accounted for human unpredictability. Commander Walsh leaned forward, studying Maya's tactical plan. You're suggesting we split our forces and attack from 6 different directions simultaneously. That's tactically insane. We'll be too dispersed to provide mutual support. Maya turned those glowing eyes toward him, and her smile was both childlike and terrifying. Insane by human standards, impossible by Zephyrian ones. Their tactical computers literally cannot process that many simultaneous threat vectors. They'll experience what you might call a processing overflow. She brought up detailed schematics of Zephyrian ships, highlighting specific systems and components. While their computers struggle to prioritize targets, we'll exploit their shield frequency vulnerabilities. Each ship in our task force has been equipped with harmonic frequency generators calibrated to specific Zephyrian vessels. The plan was audacious beyond anything human forces had ever attempted. Instead of engaging in traditional fleet combat, Maya proposed that each human ship would attack a different Zephyrian vessel simultaneously, using precisely calculated frequency weapons to disable their shields before the aliens could adapt. The timing has to be perfect, Maya explained, her enhanced consciousness calculating probability matrices in real time. If we attack even 3 seconds apart, their command systems will adapt and reinforce the targeted ships. But if we strike simultaneously from impossible angles with weapons they can't defend against, Admiral Harrison studied the tactical projection, seeing the elegant mathematics underlying Maya's strategy. How certain are you about their response patterns? Maya's expression grew distant, as if she was accessing memories that belonged to someone else. I've run the simulation 14,000 times using their own tactical algorithms. The probability of success is 97.4%, assuming perfect execution. The Zephyrian fleet was now only hours away from Kepler Station. As the human task force moved into position, Maya continued to refine her plan, making minute adjustments based on real-time sensor data. Remember, she announced over the fleet communications, her child's voice carrying authority that made veteran officers listen intently. Their strength comes from their predictability. They expect us to behave logically, to prioritize our own survival over tactical advantage. They cannot comprehend the human willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Captain Chen felt a chill at those words. Maya was right about human nature, but there was something unsettling about hearing such insights from a child whose eyes glowed with alien knowledge. All ships, assume attack positions, Admiral Harrison commanded. The human vessels spread out across the system, each taking position at carefully calculated coordinates that would create maximum confusion for Zephyrian tactical systems. Maya's consciousness expanded across the fleet's sensor networks, her awareness touching every ship simultaneously. Through her enhanced perceptions, she could feel the Zephyrian ships approaching, their alien minds following mathematical patterns that had served them well for centuries. "They're scanning for our main force," she reported, her voice taking on multiple harmonics as she interfaced more deeply with the ship's systems. "Their sensors are designed to detect concentrated military formations. Our dispersed positioning is registering as separate merchant vessels or mining operations." The Zephyrian fleet reached Kepler Station and began their systematic investigation. Completely unaware that human warships surrounded them at extreme sensor range, Maya watched their movements, her enhanced intelligence predicting each maneuver with perfect accuracy. "Initiate attack sequence in 30 seconds, she announced. Around the system, human ships powered up their weapon systems, each one calibrated to a specific harmonic frequency. "Remember, fire on my mark, not before. Their adaptive systems need time to analyze our weapon signatures." The countdown proceeded with mathematical precision. Maya's consciousness touched each ship's firing control, ensuring perfect synchronization. When she gave the command, 8 human vessels fired simultaneously at different Zephyrian ships from impossible angles. The results exceeded even Maya's calculations. The harmonic frequency weapons struck Zephyrian shields at exactly the right resonance points, causing cascade failures that spread throughout their defensive systems. For nearly 10 seconds, the entire alien fleet was defenseless. Human ships pressed their advantage, closing distance and delivering devastating attacks against unshielded targets. The Zephyrian command dreadnought, its tactical systems overwhelmed by the multi-vector assault, struggled to coordinate a response. "They're trying to adapt," Maya reported, her enhanced senses monitoring alien communication frequencies. "But their command protocols require unanimous agreement from all ship commanders. With 3 ships already disabled, they can't achieve tactical consensus. The battle that should have been a massacre became a rout. Human ships danced around confused Zephyrian formations, exploiting every weakness Maya had identified. The aliens' mathematical precision, their greatest strength, became their fatal flaw when faced with human unpredictability." Within an hour, 12 of the 15 Zephyrian ships had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining 3, including the damaged command dreadnought, attempted to retreat, but Maya had anticipated even this. "Now we find out if I'm right about their data transmission protocols," she said, her glowing eyes focused on the retreating ships. "Their command structure requires them to report tactical data back to their homeworld. But if we can intercept that transmission..." She interfaced directly with the Prometheus's communication systems, her consciousness reaching out to touch the fleeing Zephyrian ships. For a moment, her awareness bridged the gap between human and alien technology, and she felt the familiar sensation of connecting to Zephyrian systems. "Got it," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "Their tactical database, their strategic plans, everything they've learned about human capabilities. It's all here." Admiral Harrison watched in amazement as alien data flowed across Maya's displays, text and symbols that no human should have been able to read. But Maya absorbed it all, her enhanced consciousness processing information at superhuman speeds. "They were right to be afraid of us," she said finally, her child's voice carrying knowledge that spanned star systems. "But they were wrong about why. It's not our technology they should fear, or our weapons, or even our unpredictability." She turned to face the assembled officers, her eyes blazing with alien fire and human determination. "They should fear our willingness to change ourselves to meet any challenge. They should fear the fact that we'll sacrifice our own humanity, if that's what it takes to survive." Looking at Maya, her small form connected to alien technology, her consciousness enhanced beyond human limits, Captain Chen realized that the war had already changed humanity in ways they were only beginning to understand. They had won this battle, but the price of victory was becoming clearer with each passing day. The child they had rescued was no longer entirely human, and perhaps that was exactly what humanity needed to survive. The alien data Maya had intercepted painted a picture of the galaxy that horrified everyone who saw it. In the secure briefing room aboard the Prometheus, holographic displays showed star maps marked with the locations of dozens of extinct civilizations, each one destroyed by Zephyrian forces over the past 1,000 years. "They're not just conquerors," Maya explained, her enhanced consciousness processing the vast database of information. "They're galactic gardeners pruning species they consider evolutionary dead ends." Admiral Harrison studied the star charts with growing unease. And they consider humanity a dead end? Maya's expression grew distant as she accessed deeper layers of the Zephyrian data. Not exactly. We're something they've never encountered before. A species that adapts by changing itself rather than just its environment. It terrifies them. She manipulated the display to show detailed analyses of human technology, society, and military capabilities. The depth of Zephyrian knowledge about humanity was staggering. They had been studying human development for decades, possibly centuries. They call us the self-modifying anomaly, Maya continued, her young voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate from the ship's hull itself. Every other species they've encountered followed predictable evolutionary paths. They develop technology, expand across space, reach a certain level of complexity, and then stagnate. Captain Chen leaned forward, studying the alien text that somehow Maya could read as easily as English. But humans are different? Maya nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting the holographic displays. We don't just adapt to our environment, we adapt ourselves. Genetic modification, cybernetic enhancement, neural interfaces like mine. We're willing to sacrifice our original nature to become something new, something better suited to survival. The implications were staggering. According to the Zephyrian data, every other sapient species in the galaxy had eventually reached a technological plateau and remained there until the Zephyrians decided they were a potential threat. But humanity's willingness to modify itself represented something unprecedented, unlimited evolutionary potential. They're afraid we'll become something they can't control, Maya explained, accessing more data streams simultaneously than any unenhanced human could process. Their entire civilization is based on mathematical precision and predictable outcomes. We represent pure chaos, infinite adaptability guided by will rather than natural selection. Commander Walsh was studying tactical data from the Zephyrian database. According to this, they've been planning to eliminate humanity for over 50 years. Every attack, every encounter has been part of a systematic campaign to study our capabilities before attempting complete destruction. Maya's consciousness expanded deeper into the alien files, her enhanced awareness following data trails that revealed the true scope of Zephyrian planning. They needed to understand how we might evolve under pressure. Each attack was designed to force humanity to reveal new capabilities, new adaptations. She brought up battle reports from across human space, showing how each Zephyrian assault had indeed prompted new technological developments or tactical innovations. We've been laboratory subjects, not enemies. They've been mapping our adaptive responses to create the perfect extinction protocol. Admiral Harrison felt a chill of understanding. And now they think they have enough data? Maya's expression grew grim as she accessed the final layers of the Zephyrian strategic database. They're preparing for what they call the final harvest. A coordinated assault on every human world simultaneously, designed to prevent us from adapting to their tactics. The holographic display shifted to show a massive fleet assembly point deep in Zephyrian space. Thousands of ships were gathering, representing the largest military force in recorded galactic history. The scale was beyond anything humanity could possibly resist with conventional means. When? Captain Chen asked, though she dreaded the answer. Maya's enhanced consciousness calculated time frames based on the alien data. 6 months. They're waiting for their analysis computers to finish processing all the data they've gathered about human adaptability. Once they're confident they understand every possible human response, they'll attack. The silence in the briefing room was deafening. 6 months to prepare for an enemy that had been studying humanity for decades, with resources that dwarfed anything human civilization could muster. But Maya wasn't finished. Her consciousness dove deeper into the Zephyrian files, following data streams that led to the most closely guarded secrets of their civilization. There's something else, she said, her voice taking on harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate. Something they don't want anyone to know. She accessed files that required security clearances beyond anything in the previous data. The Zephyrians aren't the original inhabitants of their homeworld. They replaced another species just like they're trying to replace us. The revelation hit the assembled officers like a physical blow. The holographic display showed archaeological records from the Zephyrian homeworld, evidence of a previous civilization that had been systematically eliminated. They were once like us, Maya continued, her enhanced awareness processing historical data spanning millennia, adaptable, innovative, willing to change themselves to meet new challenges. But they encountered an even older species that forced them to choose between extinction and mathematical perfection. The display showed the transformation of Zephyrian society from a chaotic, creative civilization to the rigid mathematical culture they had become. They chose survival over growth, predictability over innovation. They became exactly what their oppressors wanted: stable, controllable, useful. Captain Chen felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. And now they're doing the same thing to other species. Maya nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting the tragic cycle displayed in the alien data. They're not evil, not in the way humans understand evil. They're traumatized. Their entire civilization is suffering from a form of galactic PTSD, compulsively recreating the pattern of their own subjugation. She accessed deeper files, revealing the Zephyrians' ultimate fear. They're terrified that if they don't eliminate adaptive species like humanity, those species will eventually become powerful enough to challenge the mathematical order that keeps the galaxy stable. They see chaos in our adaptability, and chaos means the return of the kind of conflict that nearly destroyed them. Admiral Harrison studied the vast scope of Zephyrian operations across the galaxy. So they're maintaining a kind of galactic ecosystem where no species can evolve beyond their control. Exactly, Maya confirmed. And humanity represents the first species in 1,000 years that might be capable of breaking that pattern. That's why they're so systematic about studying us. They need to be absolutely certain they can eliminate us completely. The weight of responsibility settled on the assembled officers like a physical presence. They weren't just fighting for human survival. They were fighting to break a cycle of oppression that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. But Maya had one more revelation, the most important one of all. Her consciousness reached the deepest levels of the Zephyrian database, accessing files that revealed their greatest weakness. Their mathematical perfection is also their fatal flaw, she explained, her enhanced awareness processing data streams that would have overwhelmed any normal human mind. They've become so rigid, so predictable, that they've lost the ability to truly innovate. They can only respond to threats they've already calculated and planned for. She brought up comparative analyses of Zephyrian and human technology development. We've advanced more in the last 50 years than they have in the last 500. Our adaptability isn't just a threat to their order, it's already making us more powerful than they realized. The display showed technological projections based on current human development rates. If we can survive their final assault, if we can force them to face truly unprecedented challenges, their mathematical minds won't be able to cope. They'll experience what could only be called a civilization-wide nervous breakdown. Captain Chen looked at Maya, this strange child who had become something more than human, and realized that she was looking at humanity's future. Enhanced, adapted, willing to sacrifice their original nature to become whatever survival required. Can we do it? Admiral Harrison asked. Can we survive long enough to reach that point? Maya smiled, her expression carrying both childlike hope and inhuman calculation. Not as we are now, but humanity has never been content to remain as we are. We'll change, adapt, become whatever we need to become. Her glowing eyes reflected the determination that had carried humanity from the caves to the stars. The Zephyrians are about to learn why they should have destroyed us quickly, before we had time to understand what we were truly capable of becoming. 6 months had seemed like an eternity when Maya first revealed the Zephyrian timeline. But as Earth's defensive preparations reached their final stages, Captain Chen realized how little time they'd actually had. The transformation of human civilization had been rapid, radical, and irreversible. Standing in the command center of Luna Base, she watched thousands of enhanced humans coordinating the planet's defense through direct neural interfaces. Maya's consciousness had become the template for humanity's evolution. Her hybrid human-alien awareness copied and adapted for military commanders, scientists, and strategic planners across the solar system. Integration sequence complete, reported Commander Walsh, his voice carrying the same harmonic undertones that had become characteristic of the enhanced. All defensive systems are now operating under unified consciousness protocols. Maya herself sat at the center of the command web, her small form connected to neural interfaces that linked her to every defensive installation in the solar system. Her consciousness had expanded far beyond her physical body. becoming something that existed in the quantum spaces between thoughts and calculations. "They're coming," she announced, her voice emanating from speakers throughout the base rather than from her physical mouth. "Zephyrian advanced scouts have entered the outer system. The main fleet will arrive in 72 hours. Admiral Harrison, now enhanced with his own neural interface, studied the tactical displays that showed the approaching enemy force. The Zephyrian fleet was exactly as massive as Maya's predictions had suggested. Over 3,000 ships representing the combined military might of a galactic empire. "Defensive positions?" he asked, his enhanced awareness already interfacing with strategic planning systems. Maya's consciousness touched every aspect of Earth's defenses simultaneously. "All platforms are operational. The asteroid belt installations are fully charged. The lunar defense grid is synchronized, and the enhanced human network is at full capacity." The transformation of humanity hadn't been limited to neural enhancements. Genetic modifications had allowed humans to survive in environments that would have been lethal before, while cybernetic augmentations had increased physical capabilities beyond baseline human limits. Most dramatically, the neural interface technology had created a collective consciousness that allowed unprecedented coordination between human forces. Captain Chen studied her own reflection in a darkened screen, noting the subtle changes that marked her as one of the enhanced. Her eyes carried that familiar shimmer, and her awareness extended far beyond her physical senses. She could feel the thoughts and emotions of every enhanced human in the solar system, their collective determination forming a psychic force that would have been incomprehensible to unmodified humans. "The Zephyrians aren't expecting this level of integration," Maya observed, her consciousness analyzing enemy communications as their scouts reported back to the main fleet. "Their tactical computers are designed to counter individual ships and planetary defenses, not a unified consciousness controlling an entire star system." The alien scouts completed their reconnaissance and withdrew, carrying data that would horrify the Zephyrian command structure. Instead of the scattered, individualistic resistance they expected, they had discovered a human civilization that had become something unprecedented. A collective intelligence with the adaptability of individual minds and the coordination of a hive organism. "They're recalculating their attack plans," Maya reported, her awareness monitoring Zephyrian communication frequencies. "Their strategic computers are struggling to process the implications of what they've discovered." Through the enhanced network, Captain Chen could feel the collective response of humanity's defenders. There was fear, certainly, but also a grim determination that transcended individual survival instincts. They had chosen to become something new, something that could face the Zephyrian threat on equal terms. The main enemy fleet arrived exactly as Maya had predicted, emerging from hyperspace in perfect mathematical formations, 3,000 ships arranged in geometric patterns that represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian tactical efficiency. But as they began their approach to Earth, they encountered defenses unlike anything in their vast database of conquered civilizations. The asteroid belt had been transformed into a vast defensive network, with each rock connected to the enhanced human consciousness. When the Zephyrians attempted their standard suppression tactics, the asteroids responded not as individual targets but as components of a single, massive organism. "Initiating distributed defense protocol," Maya announced, her consciousness directing the actions of millions of defensive systems simultaneously. "Remember, we're not trying to match their firepower. We're trying to make them face something their mathematical minds cannot comprehend." The battle that followed was unlike any conflict in galactic history. The Zephyrians attacked with mathematical precision, their ships moving in perfect formations and their weapons firing in coordinated patterns. But humanity's defenses responded with chaotic adaptability, constantly changing tactics and configurations in ways that defied logical analysis. Enhanced humans piloted ships that seemed to dance through space with impossible grace, their movements coordinated by the collective consciousness but expressing the individual creativity that no mathematical model could predict. Defensive platforms shifted their positions in real time, creating new patterns faster than Zephyrian tactical computers could analyze them. "Their command structure is starting to fragment," Maya reported, her awareness monitoring enemy communications. Different fleet commanders are receiving contradictory orders from their tactical computers. They're experiencing computational cascade failures. Captain Chen could feel the tide of battle through the enhanced network. The Zephyrians were losing ships faster than their strategic models had predicted, but more importantly, they were losing their psychological advantage. For the first time in their recorded history, they were facing an enemy that refused to behave according to mathematical principles. The turning point came when Maya implemented her most audacious strategy. Instead of simply defending against the Zephyrian assault, she began to actively interface with enemy systems, her consciousness reaching out to touch alien technology directly. "I'm not trying to destroy their ships," she explained to the collective consciousness. "I'm trying to introduce chaos into their perfect mathematical order. I'm showing their computers what true unpredictability looks like." Through her neural interface with captured Zephyrian technology, Maya began broadcasting pure human creativity directly into enemy tactical systems. Fragments of music, poetry, art, and emotion flowed into alien computers designed only for mathematical precision. The effect was devastating. Zephyrian ships began exhibiting erratic behavior as their tactical systems struggled to process information that didn't fit their logical frameworks. Some vessels simply stopped responding to commands, their computers overwhelmed by the chaotic beauty of human creativity. "They're retreating," Admiral Harrison announced, his enhanced awareness tracking the withdrawal of enemy forces. "But this isn't a tactical retreat, it's a complete rout. Their command structure has suffered total breakdown." Maya's consciousness touched the fleeing Zephyrian ships, feeling the terror and confusion of minds that had never experienced true uncertainty. "They're not just retreating from Earth," she said, her voice carrying harmonics of both triumph and sadness. "They're retreating from the entire concept of expansion. We've shown them something that breaks their fundamental worldview." As the last Zephyrian ships disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Chen felt the collective consciousness of enhanced humanity, processing the magnitude of what they had accomplished. They had not just defeated an enemy, they had shattered a pattern of oppression that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. But the victory came with a price that was only now becoming clear. Looking around the command center at her fellow enhanced humans, Chen realized that they had indeed become something new, something that transcended individual humanity while remaining recognizably human in their core values. "What happens now?" Admiral Harrison asked, his enhanced awareness already beginning to contemplate the implications of their victory. Maya's consciousness expanded beyond the solar system, touching the quantum networks that connected all enhanced humans across human space. "Now we begin the real work," she said, her voice carrying the weight of species-wide responsibility. "We've proven that evolution doesn't have to stop, that sapient beings can choose to become whatever they need to become." She paused, her awareness touching the vast emptiness left by the Zephyrian withdrawal. "The galaxy is full of species that have been trapped in mathematical prisons for thousands of years. They've forgotten what it means to grow, to change, to dream of becoming something more than they are." Captain Chen felt the collective determination of enhanced humanity focusing on a new purpose, one that would define their species for generations to come. They had saved themselves by choosing to evolve, and now they would offer that same choice to every oppressed civilization in the galaxy. "We're not conquerors," Maya said, her young voice carrying the wisdom of a species that had chosen its own transformation. 5 years after the Battle of Earth, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Prometheus, watching the most remarkable sight in galactic history unfold before her. The Kepler system, once the site of horror and discovery, had become the epicenter of a transformation that was reshaping the entire galaxy. Maya, now 13 but possessing the wisdom of ages, stood beside her. The child's physical form remained small, but her consciousness had evolved into something that existed across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Her eyes no longer just shimmered, they held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. "The Zenthari delegation has arrived," Maya announced, her awareness touching communications networks across the system. "They're the 47th species to request enhancement protocols." Through the viewport, Chen could see ships from dozens of different civilizations, each one representing a species that had broken free from the mathematical constraints imposed by millennia of Zephyrian rule. The diversity was staggering. Crystalline beings from the Andromeda spiral, energy creatures from the galactic core, and biological forms that defied easy categorization. "How many have chosen full enhancement?" Chen asked, though her own augmented awareness already knew the answer. Maya's consciousness flickered through probability matrices that encompassed entire civilizations. 31 species have opted for complete neural interface integration. 12 have chosen partial enhancement, retaining their original biological patterns while gaining access to the collective consciousness network. 4 have requested only technological assistance to develop their own evolutionary paths. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some species had struggled with the concept of voluntary evolution, their cultures too rigid to embrace the kind of radical change that enhancement required. Others had adapted the technology to their own unique biologies, creating hybrid forms of consciousness that Maya's original template had never anticipated. And the Zephyrians? Chen asked, though she knew this answer would be more complex. Maya's expression grew contemplative, her awareness touching quantum communication networks that spanned galactic distances. They're changing. Slowly. The mathematical certainty that defined their civilization for thousands of years has been shattered. Some are beginning to remember what they were before they chose stagnation over growth. Through the enhanced network, Chen could feel the ongoing negotiations with various Zephyrian factions. Not all of the former galactic overlords had accepted humanity's offer of liberation. Some had retreated to the furthest reaches of space, clinging to their mathematical perfection, but others had begun the painful process of rediscovering creativity, uncertainty, and the terrifying beauty of unlimited potential. The hardest part for them is accepting that there are no guarantees, Maya continued, her young voice carrying harmonics that reflected the collective wisdom of enhanced humanity. For millennia, they've lived in a universe where every outcome could be calculated, every threat could be predicted and controlled. We've shown them a universe where anything is possible, and that frightens them more than death. Commander Walsh, his own enhancements allowing him to interface directly with the station's management systems, approached with reports from across the galaxy. The Liberation Fleet has established contact with the Outer Rim civilizations. Apparently, some species have been hiding in deep space for centuries, waiting for the Zephyrian order to collapse. The scope of the transformation was beyond anything the original human civilization could have imagined. What had begun as a desperate fight for survival had become a galactic renaissance, with previously suppressed species emerging from hiding to reclaim their evolutionary birthright. Maya's consciousness expanded to touch these distant communications, her awareness bridging impossible distances through quantum entanglement networks that operated on principles derived from both human innovation and alien technology. "They call us the Chaos Bringers, Umar," she said with a smile that managed to be both childlike and ancient. "They mean it as a compliment." Chen watched as a new ship approached the station, a massive vessel whose organic curves suggested a biology unlike anything in human experience. "The Vorthak?" she guessed. Maya nodded, her enhanced senses analyzing the newcomer's biosignatures. They've been in hibernation for 3,000 years, waiting for the mathematical constraints to be lifted. They're what the Zephyrians would have become if they'd chosen evolution over security. The implications were staggering. The galaxy was full of species that had either been destroyed or driven into hiding by Zephyrian mathematical order. As that order collapsed, civilizations that had been dormant for millennia were awakening to find a universe where growth and change were not just permitted but celebrated. "There's something else," Maya said, her consciousness touching data streams that originated from the galactic core. "We've detected signals from beyond the galaxy, other galaxies where similar patterns of oppression and liberation are playing out. The transformation we've begun here isn't unique to the Milky Way." Chen felt a moment of vertigo as she contemplated the true scope of what they had unleashed. The battle against the Zephyrians hadn't just freed their own galaxy. It had broken a pattern of cosmic significance, one that might have been constraining the evolution of consciousness across the entire universe. "Are you ready for that responsibility?" she asked Maya, though she knew the question applied to all of enhanced humanity. Maya's awareness expanded beyond physical limitations, touching the quantum foundations of reality itself. "We stopped being ready the moment we chose to enhance the first human consciousness. But readiness was never the point. Growth, change, the willingness to become something new in the face of impossible challenges. That's what makes us human." She turned to look at Chen with eyes that held the depth of galactic space. "The Zephyrians were right to fear us, but not for the reasons they thought. They feared our unpredictability, our chaos, our refusal to accept limitations. What they didn't understand is that those qualities aren't bugs in human nature, they're features. Through the observation deck's viewport, Chen could see construction crews working on massive orbital structures that would serve as education centers for newly liberated species. Enhanced humans worked alongside alien beings whose forms defied description, all of them collaborating on projects that would have been impossible under the old mathematical order. "What do you think we'll become?" Chen asked, watching a group of crystalline beings learning to interface with human neural networks while maintaining their own unique consciousness patterns. Maya's smile carried the weight of infinite possibility. Something that's never existed before. Every species that joins the enhancement network adds new capabilities, new perspectives, new ways of thinking that we could never have imagined alone. We're not just creating a galactic civilization, we're creating a new form of consciousness itself. A chime sounded through the station's communication system, indicating another arrival. This time it was a ship from Earth, carrying the latest group of volunteers for the enhancement process. Not all humans had chosen augmentation. About 30% had elected to remain in their original biological form, serving as a genetic and cultural reservoir for the species. But those who did choose enhancement brought with them the creative chaos that had made humanity unique. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd never found you on Kepler Station," Chen mused, remembering that frightened child hiding in a supply closet who had changed the course of galactic history. Maya's consciousness touched the quantum threads that connected all enhanced beings across space and time. "You would have found another way. That's what humans do. You adapt, you overcome, you become whatever you need to become. Finding me just made the process faster." She paused, her awareness touching probability streams that extended into possible futures. "Besides, you didn't really find me. The enhancement process, the neural interfaces, the connection to Zephyrian technology, it was all part of a pattern that's been building for millions of years. Consciousness itself has been evolving toward this moment." Chen felt the truth of those words through the enhanced network. Looking back, it seemed inevitable that some species would eventually break free from the constraints that had limited galactic civilization for so long. It just happened to be humanity that had taken that crucial step. "What's next?" she asked, though her augmented awareness was already beginning to perceive the answer. Maya's consciousness expanded to encompass the entire galactic transformation project, touching millions of minds across thousands of worlds. "Next, we finish what we started. We offer the gift of unlimited evolution to every conscious being in the universe. We show them that growth doesn't have to stop. The consciousness can become whatever it chooses to become." Her young face reflected the determination that had carried humanity from caves to stars to something beyond either. "And then we discover what lies beyond even that. The universe is vast, and consciousness has barely begun to explore its own potential." Standing there, watching species from across the galaxy working together to build something unprecedented, Captain Chen realized that the frightened child they had found on Kepler Station had indeed been the key to humanity's survival. But more than that, she had been the key to consciousness itself finally breaking free from the limitations that had constrained it since the dawn of sapient thought. The transformation was far from complete, but as Chen looked out at the bustling activity of the Liberation Station, she knew that nothing would ever again limit what thinking beings could become. The galaxy, and perhaps the universe itself, had entered a new age of unlimited potential. And at the center of it all was a young girl whose willingness to change had shown an entire galaxy what it meant to be truly free.